Blaufränkisch is at the moment the variety that so much people in the fine wine world looking for. If we all think about constantly ripe, cool climate red wine, suddenly the wine world gets very small. I think Blaufränkisch is one maybe of the winner, that it's getting warmer, not cooler.
You described it so well that I almost want to have a glass in front of me.
Yeah, that was the same thing that I had. I was missing now red wine, a Blaufränkisch especially.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of my mouth filled with saliva. I was like, oh, where is that glass of Blaufränkisch?
Oh, thank you.
You're doing all the talking and I'm just drinking, but no.
We should be the same line.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the vineyard itself is always, for me, own personality. I wouldn't describe it with the whole word terroir. It's a personality, the interpretation of this personality from the winemaker. A vineyard is like a piano. It's not playing by itself. You need somebody who likes to play a piano.
Hi, everybody. This is Agnes from No Sediment, and welcome to No Sediment Wine Podcast. Today, my guest is Georg Prieler, a winemaker at Weingut Prieler, owner, winemaker, everything.
Everything.
In one person. Yes, from Austria, Burgenland. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm very fine. I just arrived today.
Okay. Early flight? No?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, for a farmer, early flight has to be a really early flight.
Okay, maybe before we start, you can introduce yourself, talk about the Weingut Prieler and your journey in the wine.
Mm-hmm. I had the pleasure to grow up in a winery, and grew up to really live in the winery when, as a very young boy. That means that you see, you feel, you have the feeling what wine means, and also the producing of wine and the farming side. So when I was a little child, I was in the cellar, I was out in the vineyards, I was playing. So you actually, the ground that you understand nowadays for wine, you understand as child as a playground. And so in this winery that I grew up, my parents and even my grandparents made a fantastic job to have the vineyards not in the flat area, all up on the hills, on this small amount of hills, the so-called Leiterberg, in the very eastern part of Austria. There's a lake very close to us, the Neusiedlersee, the biggest flat lake of Central Europe, but we call it as a joke, the ocean of the non-swimmers.
It's very shallow, yes?
Yeah, only 1.5 meter.
You can walk through.
Yeah, you feel like Jesus. And in this area, I had the pleasure between this small amount of hills, which belongs to the Alps and the lake, to grow up in a small village called Schütz im Gebirge, where my family is since the 13th century, but the 2 generations before did an amazing job in case of the vineyards. Nowadays we have 24 hectares. They're all produced by ourselves, all owned. And from the 24 hectares, 80% is planted with 2 varieties. Blaufränkisch, the DNA of Burgenland, and Pinot Blanc.
Pinot Blanc, okay. I also know, or at least I think I know, you traveled a lot. You have done something worked in New Zealand and Argentina. Is there something you have brought from these countries, the experience, back to Austria?
I mean, first of all, you only know what's good at home if you saw something different. Then you know what uniqueness your home has. And beside that, it's a huge experience for the person itself to get open-minded and to see something different. I wanted to see in New Zealand, when I went to New Zealand, I wanted to see a winery that's newly interpreted with a land with no history for wine, but by a person, Rudi Bauer, which comes from the old world. That means it was for me very fascinating. Same size like us. Maybe I was one of the very last person who went to New Zealand without being interested in Sauvignon Blanc. I went for Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris. Everybody wanted to show me Sauvignon Blanc, but I said, I'm a Burgundy drinker, it's... Even if Sauvignon Blanc, of course, can taste different, but in general, it's very fruity. And then I wanted to see one big one, how they manage actually the point of quality in the vineyards. For me, always most fascinating was actually more the farming part as the cellar, because the cellar is the logical consequence for the farming part. That means in Argentina, I wanted to see the high altitudes, how you grew wines on high altitudes, on dry land, different varieties, how you manage the harvest in the perfect situation, and that the cellar was the logical consequence, that the wines that they want to make from these lands.
Well, I have prepared a few questions regarding the vineyards, but before that, I wanted to ask you specifically about the two grapes that you mentioned, the Blaufränkisch and Pinot Blanc. So if I understand correctly, your father was one of the pioneers with the red wines. And then, but before we go with red wines, for me, it's more interesting to talk currently about the Pinot Blanc, because when did you realize that this grape is perfect for your terroir? Because that's not a grape that everyone understands. It's like, this is a fine wine, I will choose Pinot Blanc. That's something you had to probably work with. I don't know.
Why to choose Pinot Blanc is a question that I was myself looking for origins. That means, how can I get the most taste out of the vineyards that are in my village, in my neighbor village? I had a look, okay, which variety is well planted? That means you find in different spots, not only from me, but which variety is there since a long time. That means exists, not only stops and goes and stops and goes, which exists at a long time and has worthiness. That means Pinot Blanc was planted since the 12th century in our region.
Wow.
We belong to the North Alpine heritage. That means that we are all related together. In our case, it's planted by the Cistercian monks, the 12th century, even before of the Romans, of course, of everything, but the real plantings, 12th century. So, and then I had a look which variety is planted on the best vineyard site, not only lot planted on the best vineyard site. When it comes to the point, it goes just for Pinot Blanc, or as we call Weißburgunder in the village. And this variety has a huge amount of advantages, especially nowadays where it's getting warmer. When you look to the ripeness of the free Burgundian varieties, my brain, the Chardonnay, Pinot Gras, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc. Pinot Blanc is always the latest one in sugar degradation, which is up to date nowadays, where it gets extremer, the weather.
Yeah.
And Pinot Blanc is positive neutral. That means that if you have a vineyard, which is a soil which is very tasty, in our case it's schist or limestone, then you have the possibility to get as much as possible tastiness of these vineyards to the glass through this tool, Pinot Blanc. And Pinot Blanc is to handle as well very good.
So would you say that Pinot Blanc is a grape variety that perfectly transports the terroir into the glass, or
in my opinion, it's because it has less taste. It is the perfect way if you want to show your origin, less than stylistic.
Okay.
That point.
Okay. I also think of Pinot Blanc as a grape that has, or it is rather phenolic grape, like it has a phenolic grape. How do you keep the balance between the structure of the wine and the fruit in the wine? I guess it's a winemaking question. I don't know. Maybe it's also terroir question.
I mean, Austria in general, if I always say Austrian, if I'm far away, everybody thinks about very cool alpine skiing. Oh, thank you.
You're doing all the talking and I'm just drinking, but no.
We should be the same line.
Yeah, that's true.
No, everybody thinks about skiing and stuff like that. But you have to know, we are in the very eastern part of Austria, close to Hungarian border. That means we are the warmest part. That means we can offer a lot, but not a lot amount of acidity. The freshness that we get one side from limestone and second side from structure, tannin structure. So traditional in our region is skin maturation for the white wines has always been there. Nowadays, of course, much more professional than my grandfather did. I mean, my grandfather kicked it in the press and let it stay for a few hours as long as it could. If the grapes was cool, longer. If it's warm, shorter. But nowadays, we destem it. We have a look to the berries. And we are very focused on the skin maturation on the cleanest way and very tasty. That means when you feel the tannin texture is very often like green tea, very good one. And when it comes from the beginning of the towns to the middle to the end, it's the moment where it's the right moment to press. It takes around 6 hours to 3 days. It depends to the vineyard, it depends to the vintage. So it's really tough to say that after 3 days you have to decide to ferment it on skins or not. Maybe that's a reason why we always have this combination of freshness without being too acidic.
Okay, but I guess the temperature is also a bit lower when you keep it on the skins, is it?
Yes,
Okay.
we cool it down. We do not use any sulfur at all. I really wanted to keep the enzymes as much as possible to not stop it.
Yeah.
Because it makes no sense if you stop it at the same time you want it.
Yeah,
So no sulfur at all, but we cool it down to 4 degrees.
4 degrees, okay. And you said that you might make a decision to ferment it on the skins as well?
It could be.
It could be.
But
So,
last time that it happened is a long time ago. From that part, you get more rustical. It's a decision of your interpretation of this grape or this vineyard. If you want it more the finest way or more on the intense way
okay.
on that. Nowadays, because of the warmness that we have during harvest, when I was a child, we was harvesting in gumboots in the middle of October on a cool, foggy day. I mean, I'm very happy that we harvest nowadays with flip-flops, short trousers and sun creams and clean grapes, no botrytis, nothing.
Yeah.
But the disadvantage is that the grapes are quite warm when they come in, even in the morning.
And another question I wanted to ask you, how do you approach the use of oak in your winemaking? So is it something that you also use as a way to increase the structure in the wine, or do you strive for some oaky flavors, which is not fashionable right now, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah, oak is for me to breathe. Pinot Blanc is really, really, you have to be careful because it's immediately easy to influence. It's a very sensitive grape. That means when I came to the winery, my father worked with big wooden casks and small barriques. It was the matter of 80s, 90s. It was the greatness of Bordeaux, and he was producing a little bit of white wine beside.
Okay.
That means that Blaufränkisch always was very tannic. Not in a Bordeaux way, it's more the interpretation of the time that it's skin maturation for 6 to 7 weeks. And also for the white, so he worked with small barrels to get as much air as possible in this cool side, and big wooden casks to protect something. When I came to the winery about 2002, 2004, I switched to 500-liter barrels to get less of this oak taste from the barriques, but the big wooden cask, it was too early. It was this time, luckily, it was too cool. You need oxidation. Nowadays, when it's getting warmer, you don't need oxidation, you need more protection of fruit and slightly aging. That means that we changed then from 500-liter fresh, or we are still in the progress. For white wines, we already did. From 500-liter barrels of Austrian oak to 1,200 and bigger to really slightly age. And as a second part, I was always looking for something that gives more impact to limestone vineyards, but without changing the character of the region, without flavors. So, for example, I tried some concrete, which was very cool and funky, but it was a little bit more impact in the taste. So I was feeling the concrete so much. And I said, it's a cool stuff, but it's not the one that I'm looking at the moment. So I changed, and then I found the amphora, which I can leave in the cellar like my barrels, nothing hocus pocus, just simply place it and treat it like the barrels. And this was exactly the combination between amphora and big wooden cask, to have the combination between this extremely oxidation of amphora to get out more the citric character, but beside that to get the finesse that we all like to have in our class from the big wooden cask, the slowly aging.
And the amphora, is it lined with some waxy texture, waxy something, like elements?
It's a very pure amphora made in Slovenia. So very close to us, actually.
Yeah.
Only 500-600 kilometers away, and burned and outside like inside.
Okay, so there's quite a lot of oxygen transfer.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
Also, the form is quite cool. It's like a bottle. That is, so you have openness, you have extremely reductiveness, you have some saltiness in the middle in the taste. So if you want to taste it, it's really tough. You actually have to rank it.
Okay.
Mix it, and then you can taste it. Otherwise, you have on the bottom like reductiveness that you think it's like Merceau. So all the reductiveness that I don't like, honestly, because not everything should taste like Merceau.
Yeah.
Merceau is Merceau, and we like the best. So that's why I rank it, and then it getting this own character.
Okay. So if you talk about reductiveness, it means that there's some lees on the bottom. So it's something that you do as well. So you age your wines on the lees.
Yeah, I never rank it.
Okay.
In the past, I always said if there happens any difficult vintages or I see that the reductiveness gets in a negative way, I rank it, but I didn't rank the wine since 10 years. We have everything is handpicked from organically produced grapes, certificated. We have very, very pointed out in the vineyard that the perfection, that the sorting table is having no work in the cellar. Then you did a good job. And we, after skin maturation, we press it gently. We let it settle down overnight because after skin maturation, it's really cloudy, really dirty. It's very rustical.
Yeah.
And then we rank it. So you have a huge amount of own yeast that already starts to ferment. And this is the yeast that I also want to keep in my barrels. And if you work with reductiveness, you always have the most important thing is how much time you have. If I want to bottle it, harvesting in September, bottle it in January, this system doesn't work.
Okay.
This is too much character, too short time. You need a minimum of 1.5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Really get the winter, the summer, the spring and the autumn is a different feeling for the wine and a different way of open-minded. That's why we don't need sulfur during the process of maturation, because we have so much hard lees and we have tannin texture. Both things that anyway conserves and let the wine age in harmony.
That's amazing. So you don't use any sulfur during the aging?
During maturation, no. Only if I love it to bottle.
Yeah.
That's the moment where I want to conserve it. This taste that I feel it's the right moment. That means when the nose starts to open up, it's getting this cleanness and this finesse, and the palate, the tannins go to the back. Then it's the moment to bottle it. That means for me, ranking, sulfiding, bring it to the bottle. It doesn't matter when you release it, just to bottle it.
Okay.
From that. Releasing is always a different thing than bottling for me.
Okay, cool. If we move to the Blaufränkisch now, how would you describe the signature characteristics of Blaufränkisch if we compare it to other grape varieties of the world? Because Austrians, and I agree, it is one of the greatest red grape varieties for certain in Austria. So how would you describe it?
I mean, Blaufränkisch is at the moment the variety that so much people in the fine wine world looking for. A cool, constantly ripe, cool climate red wine.
Yeah.
If we all think about constantly ripe, cool climate red wine, suddenly the wine world gets very small. I think Blaufränkisch is one maybe of the winner, that it's getting warmer, not cooler. I remember in the past, when I opened up the wines for my grandfather from the 60s, if you had a great vintage, it was a fantastic Blaufränkisch. But if it was a little bit cooler, difficult, you can keep it for another 100 years because nobody won't drink it and it has so much acidity that I can't get something wrong.
Yeah.
So if people always ask me how you can compare Blaufränkisch, to compare it's quite hard, but I see if I look to the cool climate red wine varieties around Switzerland, so around, or in Switzerland maybe, so all these varieties which is more driven by the tannin texture of black tea than dark chocolate. That means, for example, Bordeaux has dark chocolate, like a high-class Valrhone chocolate, tannin texture. For me personally, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
While, for example, Northern Rhone has black tea tannins. That means always tannins combination with a good acidity. And when I look for Côte d'Or and sometimes I like this meatiness, this warm blood notes, I find this in Blaufränkisch and schist very often. If I look to Burgundy, to Chèvre Chambertin, these autumn leaves with the citric taste, I find it very often in Blaufränkisch on limestone. If I look to the fruitiness of Barbera, if I find Blaufränkisch on clay, or even the tannin texture of Nebbiolo, you can find sometimes in Blaufränkisch. You have the impact of this huge amount of fruitiness that Spätburgunder in Germany has. I find Blaufränkisch more in the northern, in the coolest parts very often. So Blaufränkisch has so much in it of the impacts of the cool climate red wine varieties. General, I would say Blaufränkisch has always something spicy. That's the DNA of it. That means like white pepper up to meat, even up to alpine flowers. And at the same time, Blaufränkisch has some clearness. Clearness means this clear fruit like plumberry, forest berries in that case. So you have these two combinations in the nose, which is the possibility to produce the greatness of wines. And on the palate, you always have a combination between tannic and the freshness of acidity.
You described it so well that I almost want to have a glass in front of me.
Yeah, that was the same thing that I had. I was missing now red wine, the Blaufränkisch especially.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of my mouth filled with saliva. I was like, oh, where is that glass of Blaufränkisch? But you touched a little bit about the soils and how it's kind of the clay and limestone and how it translates it in the glass. But do you do anything like specific in the vineyard to bring the best qualities of Blaufränkisch in your practices?
I mean, the vineyard itself is always for me own personality. I wouldn't describe it with the whole word terroir. It's a personality, the interpretation of this personality from the winemaker. A vineyard is like a piano. It's not playing by itself. You need somebody who likes to play a piano.
Yeah.
And if he or she likes to play the piano, how talented and how actually she not only talented, how she likes to train and get in the hard situation of life. And Blaufränkisch in the vineyard, you have actually for working in the vineyard, Blaufränkisch is like the most thankful variety. I always remind me that the toughest time for us is not to harvest, it's June, May, June, when everything grows. That means you have to get Blaufränkisch into the system. Blaufränkisch grows straight.
Okay.
So thank you very much. If breaking work, it helps itself. Blaufränkisch doesn't have so much growing out on the vines. I don't know the English word. That means that you break normally away.
Yeah, those small suckers. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is a big thing because every herd that you do, it doesn't help you to get wines old. That's why Blaufränkisch gets old. You don't need a lot of cuts per year.
So it's a wine that can become old. Yeah, it's one of the wine.
Can get old. From the brewing system, it always depends on the winemaker what he decides. In our case, I love the chocks. It's called. I'm sorry, in German it would be easier.
Fine.
Especially in Burgenländisch. Yeah. That would be even harder. It's the farming language.
Yeah.
So the chocks, I always keep like 4 chocks, so that I always cut on the old wood, not on the new one. That makes less hurt at that side. And at the same side, for me, the wines nose in springs would have to carry in autumn. The other way around, the Guillot system would be, you have this bow, and the wine grows as much as it can.
Yeah.
From that part. And our system, it knows what it has to grow. And all the other ones, we already break away in May before it starts actually to grow. So there's enough energy, especially in dry regions, that's quite practical. I think there are different ideas of how to grow Blaufränkisch, and there's no right and no wrong. It always depends to the winemaker what he's looking for.
So if you compare Blaufränkisch to Pinot Blanc that we discussed before, is Pinot Blanc more finicky? Is it more difficult to work with?
More difficult than Blaufränkisch, but for example, for the sickness, Pinot Blanc is easier.
Ah, okay. So the diseases...
The diseases, Blaufränkisch has just doesn't like too wet in that case. Not for botrytis, that's not a problem at all. It's more in the June, July part, after flowering, this magic 3 weeks. Where you have to pay attention. That's the time when no winemaker talks.
Okay. So, and now we have the Blaufränkisch. So how, you mentioned it can age for 100 years. Is that true?
The wine or the wines?
The wine. The wine.
The wine, I believe nowadays for sure.
Okay.
Honestly. Because what needs a wine to age? It needs ripeness, not over-ripeness, and it needs acidity. And tannins. These 3 things is the things the Blaufränkisch has.
I also wanted to ask you, I don't remember when we discussed it, but I think we did, about the specific high lime content in your soils. I think maybe it was in the Düsseldorf this year. So you said that the high lime content in the soil is very difficult to work with, I guess. No? Is that...
Yes. It's not the easiest
Am I mistaking something?
No. That's absolutely right. It's a tough way in the case of you always get into the border of dryness, because high active limestone is like a swan. It takes the water, but it gives it away quite quickly.
Okay.
So this is always, not every variety grows on that.
So because of that soil, it also limits you with the grape varieties you can choose to.
Yes, some varieties doesn't work on it. Every variety that's growing too strong or is carrying too much as a natural, even if I reduce it, doesn't work really on limestone, in my opinion.
Okay. But what are the benefits of the limestone-rich soil?
When you taste it on the palate, you are citric, like a very good lemon. You are salty. You have like salty, like fleur de sel on the palate. You have a freshness, and at the same time you have roundness. That's these three elements which makes the greatness of wine so enjoyable at the same time.
I have heard that it also, especially nowadays with changing climate, it also increases or retains the acidity in wines. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So we have, even if the pH is not like we was trained in school books, you're still having a fantastic acidity in the feeling. I think wine is sometimes too much measured from that. I know that because I worked together with my sister until 2011, and my sister is more than intelligent. She's very down to earth, but she made a doctor in microbiology, or molecular biology. You have to ask her, and I'm a farmer.
Okay.
But we try to measure everything.
Okay.
But sometimes measuring doesn't give the taste. You mean that if this would be the perfect acidity, or this is high acidity, why does it sometimes taste like low acidity or flatness? And when it's low acidity, I'm thinking about high altitude wines, low in acidity, but amazing of freshness. That gives no logical consequence in the measuring, but in the taste for a winemaker, of course.
That's so interesting because, I agree with you. It's just so strange that sometimes you just measure things and technically it gives you specific numbers. And when you taste, it feels completely different. And I wonder why. I wonder why it's that. Because I'm a very technical person. I like, for me, it's like, let's measure everything, like Excel files. But I think it's interesting that wine offers you this kind of under the skin feeling.
Exactly. It shows you that the emotion and the interpretation, it's still something handworked. You can, of course, the industry exists in every business to make. But the handwork that wine has pays so much more feeling and attention and uniqueness that you hard to find in different agriculture products than wine. To measure something, there's a measure tolerance, and sometimes this tolerance is that makes more the taste. Then the measuring can be really taken seriously.
Yeah, great. So I feel that more estates are now focusing on the practices of viticulture and winemaking of the past. And how about you? Do you feel you have more traditional or innovative look? And you can answer taking into consideration either viticulture or winemaking. Like, how do you feel? Weingut Prieler.
I mean, my parents, my mother is 29 since a lot of years, but my father is 76. That means that he is working more than 50 or 60 years in the vineyards. He started to work with horses. That's a huge amount of experience that I have the possibility to take. And he always filled the wines into the bottles and never sold it in a barrel. That means he always sourced the customers and was always the idea behind to produce wines that it's the customer worth to buy. That means also in the vineyards to treat them so good that they make so good wines that it's the logical consequence that the customers want to have it. So I have this huge amount of experience of 60 years farming that I can take. I think just one important word is the tradition shouldn't be the exusion. That's not the right way. That is it's tradition because we always did it like that. That's not fair because our taste change. While everybody knows food that we liked for 20 years ago, we might not like today. So that's a part. And so everything changes. The weather changes, The climate nowadays, everybody feels it. We do a lot of covers nowadays that actually our grandfather did. While in the difference between, we did it not. So all these old covers in the middle, we get back.
I'm so happy to hear that.
And the reason for that is because that's the one that works. That's the one that works when it's wet. That's one that works when it's hot. You can, for example, you don't have to cut it. You can also just squeeze it, and then some of them dies and some grow again. So this is the pruning system is, for example, the one that my grandfather used. He might not use it in the system that we have nowadays. He used it more like a tree, but it's the same system of the pruning of the chocks from that. So some parts actually come back that we saw much more after we came back that we already did it. And the good thing is when you grow up in such a fantastic place like I had the chance to grow up, there's always something to try new is the most important thing, because then you know that the old thing works.
That's amazing. I mean, I sometimes think that, in the history, these people, they had maybe more time, to spend in the vineyards. That's just my opinion. And kind of see what works best and what does not. Because in our age, it's just, so fast pacing, TikTok and everything. And you maybe just don't have enough time to stop and really listen into your wines and see. And I think it makes sense that we're going back. I think it's...
I think I was of course, I'm not doing all the work by myself. I have everywhere helping hands. When you look to the best helping hands that we have in the vineyards, still, no one of them is having a smartphone. And some of them are young.
Yeah.
And they leave their phones at home. So you see that they like this moment of situation outside. I totally agree that it's important that this generation had the time and the work was so hard that you was thinking so long before you're doing a step. Nowadays, I stand up on my tractor, automatic system, I can drive with joystick if my leg hurts. So if something not working, maybe I'll just change it quickly. But to really try it is a long-term decision in farming.
You slightly touched upon it. You said that the winemaking practices differ depending on the vintage for you. And so I wanted to, ask you, so how would that change? Because sometimes I heard that some specific winemakers, for example, they make it every year the same, no matter if it's, difficult, high acid, lower acid driven wine style. So how would change your winemaking practices in the winery, for example, in a hotter vintage versus cooler vintage?
This year is a perfect example. This year we started harvest. It was the earliest harvest ever. So 26th of August, we already started harvest. On the 1st of September, I had birthday, and we was nearly in the middle of the harvest.
Wow.
So we really hurried up. In that case, we had in spring, the spring started 6 weeks earlier than normally. So normally we have pruning, and then 3 or 4 weeks time, and then there starts the vineyards to grow, and we start with the hand breakout. This year we stopped pruning. It was weekend, and the Monday we already started with the first vineyards, not the one that we pruned, but with the first vineyards already to break away. So everything starts so quickly, and we had a very warm temperature during harvest. I was thinking about, going early the day to harvest. I mean, we start normally at 7. That's not really late.
Yeah.
So I tried on the 26th, we started harvest. It was very warm. We stopped at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. On Tuesday, I waked up at 3 o'clock in the morning to have a look, about temperature. I went out to the vineyard with the light and just had a look to the grapes, and we already had 20 degrees temperature. So it was already warm. So I said, okay, it doesn't matter if you have 28 with no light, I take the 30 with light. From that to start harvest. So we started instead as soon as the sun comes out. So when it was dark, we went out to the vineyard. As soon as the sun comes out, this 5 minutes, having a coffee, and then we started harvest until 1. And then in the cellar, of course, I decided the red wines. What are you looking for, Blaufränkisch? For energy? No. For energy, there's so much wine in the world. They can do it much easier for heavy red wines. They're looking for freshness. So the fermentation of white wines and red wines in our winery was this year very close together. So we had the temperature of 24 degrees for the reds and actually 20 for the whites. So they was very close together.
Wow. I mean, isn't that one of the climate change challenges for winemakers and viticultures, that the harvest is becoming...
Yeah, the season getting very short.
Yeah, and everything happens at the same time.
You have to be very flexible nowadays, so it can come from... If I remember in June, it was not so wet. We had rain. Luckily, after years we had rain. So we was fighting against all this growing in the vineyard, to get everything in the system to make it happen. And then in 1st of July, it started hot weather. And I thought, I'm a very smart winemaker, Now my guys in the vineyards, they did a great job. We had no break. Go make a break for 3-4 weeks and come back in August, because we already reduced the grapes in May when we break out. So there's not a lot of the wines. It's more like cleaning. Let me say that nothing comes together of the grapes, so that there's no danger for detritus. So I said, let's come back in August when it's getting cooler, and this 4 weeks of heatness, we did a fantastic job. Relax.
Yeah.
So they came home back on the 1st of August. It was still damn hot. It makes no sense at all. We started cleaning from cleaning up to harvest on the next day. So Friday finished cleaning and Monday starting harvest.
Oh my God.
So this whole year, everybody after harvest was like, we did it.
And how about the disease pressure this year? I hear in France it's just devastating, in Germany as well. So were you spared? Were your region spared?
Disease means, I'm sorry.
Diseases like powdery mildew.
Oh, yeah. It was a tough time for organic workers. The organic workers has advantage in dry regions, because if there's no rain, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
But if it's the other way around, you have to be extremely fast. So this year we was driving as much as never before, honestly. We went through the vineyards 15 times. That's a huge amount of work. 24 hectares we are quite fast. So we have a fantastic tractor driver, and we need about 20 hours, but it's still 15 times 20 hours a week minimum.
Yeah.
Just for that. But we had it under control. Okay. It was a tough time, but we had it under control. 2 vineyards we lost a lot. We couldn't handle that. That was too much grown. All the compost that we brought out the last year worked this year. Because compost works most effective. Compost and also some cow shit.
Yeah.
Well, that especially cow shit that was growing less, and hope that it's raining. It was not raining this year. It was raining. But we didn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
So this was the 2 vineyards.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, happened. It's nature.
Yeah, I guess so. But since we touched upon the climate change subject, I wanted to ask you, is there any trends that you see? You mentioned cover crop, which I love, because nowadays I hate to see bare ground when I go somewhere. But maybe do you see something else that, or maybe you do, or your or other winemakers in the region do? What are the current trends to tackle?
I mean, it's not only the warmness that brings us somehow in a way to think about it. It's also this extreme of rain at the same moment. So to leave the soils open nowadays, it's like a horror, honestly, because you can open it up, then one side it can dry it out by heatness like never before. The second side it can rain so much that all the humus is gone of the last 20 years. So there has been different systems in how you can get air inside the soil without turning around everything.
Yeah.
And for example, we did one step this autumn. We did just I have to translate again. Like you just got 30 centimeters deep, you get it up and push it down. The same time, you use covers for winter time that get away this grass.
Yeah.
It should, if it's enough of rain and the weather fits, it works. And so in spring, you can put directly the covers in without crushing it.
Okay.
So that would be the target, as less as possible, to not giving any chance of water or heatness to dry it out. So the aeration is something, a big step. For water in the irrigation system, honestly, I'm not such a fan of it, on that. of the irrigation system. I understand some regions that they need it, but in general, I'm not a big fan, because if it's dry, we need all of the water from that for other things as well.
So would you say that Blaufränkisch and Pinot Blanc is drought-resistant grapes? Or just you have trained them so that the roots are deep and the soil is healthy?
First of all, the roots have to be deep. Always think about a wine is like a tree less than a field. That means they have to go down. When you do too early irrigation, the root system can happen that it goes like this. So it's never strong enough down. So it should handle by itself. And if it's a very dry vintage, you have to cut down the grapes, a few of them and more.
So that's something that you would do?
Exactly, that we do.
Okay.
For that part. So if you see that a vineyard, it's a hard time for a vineyard, don't pay too much attention on the quality, honestly. Pay attention more to cut the right moment. If it's overripe, just cut it to the soil. It's a point of this vintage. And you can't say for a farming part to harvest every year the highest amount that is possible. No, that's farming. We are playing with the nature.
Okay. So what would you say has been like the largest crop loss, for example, because of the drought that you have been going and kind of caught? Because I understand that sometimes you have to drop the fruit only for the wines to survive.
I think 30 or 40%.
Wow.
On that.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's sometimes, but it doesn't happen every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the farmer should always think about minimum of 5 years. So that's why we are not famous for releasing the new vintage, which harvests in September and January. Yeah. We're releasing most of our wines after 2 and 3 years.
Oh.
So sometimes nobody knows even that the vintage was smaller.
Okay. So how do you address maybe other environmental concerns beyond the vineyard? I don't know, maybe packaging or transportation or energy use in the wineries. There's some.
I mean, energy use is a big thing, but it's a logical thing because also of costs to get as autotone as possible. I believe in the energy, just in electricity, that we can produce by ourselves. We can work with batteries. In that case, for the cooling systems, there are things. So this is a part. The bottles, to move away year by year to lighter bottles, that still looks good, because we are still having a product which is in a luxury, not an everyday product. That means that you don't use it every day.
Of course, you make fine wine.
So in that case, just a bottle that looks good but maybe lighter. The transport way, I don't know what I should change or how I can make it happen. Most of the transport import by my importers organized.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just ask, sometimes, each of us try to address this issue differently, There is issues in the viticulture and then in the winery. And it was more like an example. We are almost to the end with the interview, but I have one question that I ask everyone. And that is, what is one wine myth you would like to debunk?
2 things. High acid doesn't mean fresh wines, and high alcohol doesn't mean heavy wines.
Yeah.
This 2 acid is not really true.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Do you care to expand? like you say, so high acid does not necessarily mean fresh wine. So
as I said, even low acidity can give you amazing freshness.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
With moderate alcohol, for example.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean acid means not always freshness, and greenish is greenish.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Maybe I have not asked you something that you wanted to talk about.
I have a dog. No.
Okay,
No,
but I have a small gift to you.
Cool.
So next time in a hot weather you go in the vineyard, so maybe you can use this. So this is no sediment.
That's very kind.
Yeah,
thank you very, very much.
Thank you for spending your time with us here today.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It was amazing.
Thank you for taking
I really
your time.
enjoyed it, and I will make sure to use a lot of the examples you gave me today, because I also do the exam, the Masters of Wine, and we usually need a lot of examples from real life winemakers. So one thing is what they write in the books, and the other thing is what they, do in the vineyards and in the winery. So thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm happy that I had the chance.
Yeah, me too.
Cheers.
Cheers.